Welcome to Money Matters TV. My name is Paul Mitchell. I'm a commercial banker. I'm your host for this show. My co-host is David Emery of the Marshall Group.
Yes, nice
David,
to see you.
Good to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
We have actually, I think, been together in the past.
Right, I think we did a show previously.
But I understand you're onto some other interesting things in terms of your field as a financial advisor. You've got some different niches you've been focusing on. Could you bring us up to date on what those are?
So one of the biggest areas where I'm helping clients more and more today is with retirement income planning. So that's one of the big areas. People anywhere from 45 to 65.
Sounds like a no-brainer with interest rates of 1%.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of it. It's kind of getting an idea of where they stand, where they want to go, and then planning on how to get there. I mean, just kind of one of the first questions I ask clients is, when you think about retirement, retirement's kind of like doing a puzzle. So if you do a jigsaw puzzle, what's the first step in doing a puzzle? So if I was to ask you that, what is it?
Like for the straight edges on the outside.
That's what most people say. But really, the first step is looking at the picture in the box, and that signifies. I know that signifies where you want to see yourself in retirement. So, a lot of people coming in, helping them with regards to understanding where they are, kind of assessing the baseline, all the different pieces of the puzzle, and then helping them put the puzzle together to get to that picture. So that's one area. And then the other area we were chatting about a little bit beforehand is helping with end of life planning, if you will, and that has to do more with people that are transitioning from the living space where they maybe raise their kids, and transitioning to where they want to age. A lot of times it's in their own house. Sometimes it's transitioning to like a continuous care retirement community. There's a lot of variables that go into that decision.
Well, another part of it is just that whole planning for that part of our time on Earth.
Sure.
I have a good friend that had an elderly cousin had cancer, and 2 weeks before they thought they were going to die or something, he said, "Would you be the executrix of my estate?" And of course, how could she say no?
Right.
It was not a big estate. Took her over a year to handle it. He had an attorney that he said, this is the person that wrote my will, please use this attorney. Unbelievable the amount of work. I mean, part of it was because he hadn't left behind, the password to his computer, his bank accounts. She checked the mail and found out this stuff, and he could provide the documentation to the institutions. Yes, I'm now the executrix.
Right.
But just any little name change difference back to somewhere to get another notarized whatever that Paul Mitchell is the same as Paul A. Mitchell, et cetera, and nobody believes you, and every exercise is a new one.
Right, you're absolutely right.
Brutal.
And it's just doing a little bit of planning can really help with regards to that. But yeah, it can be a lot of work, especially if there's assets in different states. Sometimes they need to be probated in different states. And everything from passwords to who's paying your where your bills are. If it's somebody that's not part of your life, it can be quite a scavenger hunt trying to figure it all out.
And this individual had a reverse mortgage, which I've heard about him and stuff, and I read about it, I understood him, but I didn't, she didn't, nobody did.
Right. Yeah, and that's when you pass, there's definitely things that have to happen with regards to reverse mortgages too.
So. What do you think about all these advertisements for these sure thing investments for retired people? Don't get caught up in the stock market because this will protect you, and this and that, make money like the big and wealthy people and that type of thing that the average person typically doesn't have access to.
Yeah.
Do you hear those ads too?
Yeah, I've had clients come in saying, I saw something on TV that guarantees me 4% or 5%.
Double-digit returns.
Yeah, and it's free. Well, I guess nothing in life is free, is what they say. But I guess what I say is, do your due diligence and basically ask some professionals what they think, some allied professionals. Ask family members or friends that you trust, and kind of, I guess one of the big things when I've had to ask, I mean, you look at each individual situation and see if something like that may make sense. Things, nothing comes without a cost.
Yeah.
So it's just understanding.
The difficulty is
what's best
that so many of us have to learn everything the hard way from ground zero.
Right.
When the realities are that other people have gone through this before with
Exactly.
us. 3 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago, if you could get a hold of some of those people, and especially the professionals that are, advisors, they're trade associations of whether it's accountants or attorneys or financial planners.
You're right.
That usually have some kind of accreditation for who the members are, things like that. The ways of really checking these things out. And I would suggest people actually talk to 2 or 3 or more,
Right.
and see if the information comes together, gels together.
That's a very good point. I mean, financial planning industry, there's the certified financial planning credentials, which there is a code of ethics associated with that. There's professional societies. Some planners are affiliated with NAPFA, and those are just fee-only financial planners. So, if somebody's looking at an investment like that, like you mentioned, you could go to a NAPFA, somebody's part of NAPFA, and they would give you an objective, comment on it based on them. You're paying them a fee to give you an objective advice as to what's right.
And there are regulatory agencies which you can check with, the state level certainly, maybe even the federal level, to find out if the person's been censured or
You're
something,
exactly right.
Got in trouble. I mean,
Right.
Do what you can.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
got to do some work there.
It is some work, and it's like you said, it's complicated. And who do you trust? I mean, the financial service business has had so much over the years. The one that comes to mind is Bernie Madoff, and
Billions and billions and billions.
Yeah, and I've got not recently, but right after that happened, I got that question a lot, and it's how do you make sure you're not a Bernie Madoff? And it's you have to do your homework, due diligence.
You look better.
Well, yeah. Well, thank you. So, tell me a little bit about your business. How's interest rates affecting loans these days?
Sure. Well, people are certainly cautious. For the last few years, people have been very interested, of course, in locking in, as long a term fixed rate as they could certainly for real estate financing and that type of thing. Rates are edging up. Actually, I was just checked before the show started. On the internet, what are residential mortgage rates going for these days? And it's the 3 to 4% range, which isn't quite the 2 to 3% range it was a year ago.
Right.
But heck, most of my life, and I've been around for a few decades. Interest rates for mortgages are more like 6, 7, 8%.
Right.
And of course, for a time period, they were even in the teens. But take out that. But if you're talking about 6, 7%, and we're at 4%,
still very inexpensive.
still a bargain.
Yeah.
And interest rates are going up. They've edged up a little bit already. They're going to continue to go up. The real key thing is how moderately they're going to go up.
Right.
So if interest rates jump 2 or 3 percentage points,
that's a big deal.
in 12-month period, that's a big deal. That's
Right.
it's a little nerve-wracking. But if it's a quarter point, a quarter for even 12 months, that's 1 full percentage point in a year.
Yeah.
That's moderate.
Yeah.
It's not going where you want it to go, but it's still not even as high. It gets us to a point as high as it has been traditionally in the last few decades.
Right. Yeah. I make a good point, because I remember when my wife and I first bought our first home, we paid 9.5% interest, and that was a great deal.
Wow.
And now, I mean, even like you said, between 4 and 5%, that's still very inexpensive. If you look back over 30 years, that's still got to be very, very low over that time period.
We've got a financial question from one of our viewers.
Sure.
James Young of Philadelphia writes in, what are some good ideas to obtain scholarships for my high school seniors?
That's a good question. I guess what I would start out by saying is, of course, scholarships, there's many that are nationwide scholarships.
And all different dollar amounts, too.
Exactly. And since they're, the ones that are nationwide, there's a lot of competition. They're very competitive. I would not discourage people from going after that, but that's, there's a lot of competition. I usually encourage people to look locally, meaning, in their community.
Go to the library, for example.
Go to the library.
For research advice.
Some of the nonprofit organizations, even some of the places where they work. Some mom and dad works for a firm. They may have a scholarship. I know I've seen that. And the other thing I'd say is, with regards to just in general reducing the cost of college, is to do some planning, have an understanding of what things cost, see if your family can qualify for need-based financial aid,
Right.
and pertaining to need-based financial aid, some of that is filled with grant money.
Now, another piece of advice would be have an Olympic gold medal winner.
That's true. That's true.
I think a lot of colleges would be interested and would give scholarships to those
Exactly.
people. Now, unfortunately, there are not very many of them, and it's pretty difficult to get in that category. But
Right.
recently, we've seen some pretty young people
That's right. Yeah.
score
and-
pretty high, and I think they can get scholarships a lot of places.
Yeah, and really, colleges will give out money based on merit too, which
Yes.
is what you're saying, and it's kind of a college by college situation as to what they're looking for. I mean, I've heard stories where a student plays the tuba, and the school needed a tuba player, and they gave him money to play the tuba there.
Yeah.
Who would have
Not bad.
who would have thought?
Maybe
Not
a free
bad.
ticket to the football games too.
That's
which
right.
is the same thing.
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
Some other ideas are actually even the colleges to which your high school senior is applying to. Ask the admissions officer. Ask anybody you know.
That's right.
Anybody you run into.
Yeah.
All over the place.
Yeah.
Of course, now we have the internet too,
Right.
and of course you have to be careful with the internet. I mean, there's all kinds of things out there. I did a little internet search before.
You did? You looking for a scholarship?
For the show? Well, in response to this question,
Good,
trying to get
yeah,
a
absolutely,
little leg
yeah.
up. And I got some big type here to.
So you
this
can
was,
see it.
This was put out by college.USA Today. USA Today is the newspaper.
Yep.
So I don't think it's biased in any way. So there's some degree of I'll say credibility. But here's some names.
Oh yeah. Oh
that you
yeah.
could- that you could Google or use your
fast
search
web,
engine.
absolutely. Yep.
So you're not the first person to
That's
have
right.
the same question.
That's right. Yeah.
And there are a whole bunch of different outfits here. So I would look at them all.
Yep. Yep. And like you mentioned, I think previous when we were chatting, there's apps for that, right?
These are apps.
Yeah. Oh, they're all apps. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Scully was one. That was on a
that the one, Shark
television
Tank? Yeah.
Shark Tank
Yep.
show a while ago. It was very popular. Apparently still in business. That was a local
Right.
local student from Drexel
Yeah.
University.
That's neat.
And there are a bunch of others. So there's a lot of research to be done.
That's right.
Get your high school students to do some of the research on the internet if you're
Yeah.
not too good about it yourself.
Absolutely.
So it takes some work,
Yeah.
but it's out there. And of course, one of the biggest ones is a private out-of-state school. It's going to cost you probably at least double what an in-state public school.
Right.
And at the undergraduate level, how much of a big deal is that?
Yeah.
If your
That's a
student
lot of
wants to
money.
go on to get a degree in law or medicine or in history, PhD or a math PhD, that's grad school.
Yeah. Well, you make a really good point on. I see more and more clients coming through now that they feel the kids are going to graduate school. So if you know that up front, and you can plan for not just the 4-year but the graduate school. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. And one of the things recently that I've noticed is regarding loans. There's a big piece of the whole paying for college is loans, and if you know your student's going to graduate school, there's a lot of sense, a lot of logic to the point of taking out more undergraduate student loan debt than graduate, and the reason for that is the interest rates on graduate student loan debts is usually higher than the undergraduate.
Good advice, David.
That's
Thanks.
right.
Well, if other viewers have questions they would like to send into Money Matters TV, here's how you do it.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says Send Us Your Questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, M-O-N-E-Y, -matters, M-A-T-T-E-R-S, TV.
And now I'd like to welcome our featured guest for this show, Jerry Elman of the Elman Technology Group, PC. Sounds like an attorney to me.
That's right.
So technology law,
Yeah.
what's happening there these days?
Well, I have a boutique law practice in Media, Pennsylvania, with myself and a few other associates. The area of technology law involves various things, including patents, trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets, areas of law that can help protect inventors and business startups that are involved in technology. In the current areas of what I've been looking at, that has included areas that involve the Internet of Things and the blockchain as current developments in the last year.
So the Internet of Things, I've heard that term a lot, but explain a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that's something that's often abbreviated the IoT, and it involves computers that are talking with other computers without the involvement of individual people. So these things are communicating.
Sounds scary.
Well, there's a lot of scariness to it because you get issues of privacy and security when these different gizmos are talking with each other. They also have certain vulnerabilities that arise when the communications come in, and if they're not secure, they can end up being hacked in a way that they can then be used to create attacks and things like a botnet that can eventually take down various important internet sites. And some of these botnet attacks have occurred in the last couple of years rather significantly.
Interesting.
So the area of Internet of Things is something that requires attention to security. So as clients come to me that are interested in developing projects in the Internet of Things, I recommend that they design their projects from the ground up with security in mind, and also to try to maintain the privacy of information as best that can be maintained. I would mention that back this last June, I gave a talk on privacy and security for the Internet of Things at a government technology conference. And if folks want to go to my website, elman.com, they can sign up to immediately download the slideshow from that presentation on privacy and security for the Internet of Things.
Is there, what can you do to protect yourself then? I mean, if this is where everything is going, I mean, that kind of sounds like people can be vulnerable. You record, they're talking back and forth. I could see even in our business, the financial service business, how that could be a breach of security. Client calling in, and it's not really the client; it's a recording of a client.
Very much so. As a matter of fact, one thing that happens quite frequently is that a real estate broker will get an internet message from someone who purports to be the representative of the seller, and who says, we've now changed our bank, so here's where you should send the wire transfer. And a number of real estate brokers up until recently have been taken in by that, and the significant amounts of money have been diverted. In the last few months, I gave 2 presentations to real estate brokers to help them be aware of that fact and be clear to check in advance that if they get any kind of communication like that, make sure you call by another channel to find out that that's really a legitimate communication.
Oh my goodness.
That is scary.
Yeah.
So if somebody does want to look for your website, it was Elman?
ELMAN.com.
Simple as that.
Simple as that.
Okay.
Got a
Not
short last
name. Elman. Okay.
No, got a
Good.
short last name, and I jumped in immediately when the
Got it.
Internet domains opened up and got a 5-letter domain.
The shorter the better. The
Yeah.
more valuable, the shorter they are. I understand.
Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating.
Yeah. So that's. So do you think that with regards to the security, you think this is? I think I'd heard at one time that we're probably in this period of time where you have the largest probability of breach now. The technology is going to change such that in a number, I don't know how many years, but it's going to, this whole problem is going to get muted significantly. Is that accurate at all?
Well, we haven't yet hit the tipping point on that, but we're certainly working towards it. The problem is that as computers started coming in and proliferating, they were first thought of as individual workstations that really wouldn't be connected together.
Right.
So as a result of that mindset, there really wasn't very much privacy and security built in, because there wasn't a sense that things would be connected. Then safe computing sort of got built on top of that, and we're in a situation where it's very much a requisite for the user to be responsible for things that really, if the system were well designed from the scratch, wouldn't have been the requirement.
I see.
It's still important to make sure that your operating system is fully patched with the latest patches, make sure that your applications have the latest updates, to make sure that when you first get some new product that is internet connected, you go in and check to see what the default password is and change it to something that's unique to yourself, because a lot of the bad guys know those default passwords and can get in and end up using your television set, say, either to spy on you or to be a computer that they can then use to create attacks on other parts of the web.
Yeah. I know in the banking industry, I've had questions with various banks that I've been from customers in terms of the degree of I guess liability the bank has and or the customer has. And the answer I got from the bank security department was there's a lot more liability on the customer's part than they might think. The way to find out is read the fine print and all their agreements with deposit accounts or loans or whatever. It's unbelievable. And to a certain extent, I mean, the bank can't be responsible for what how you handled your computer, for example, no passwords or something like that, et cetera. You'd mentioned before about certain clothing is going to be connected to the Internet of Things. Clothing? My suit?
Yeah, you had mentioned scholarship at Drexel University, and it turns out that Drexel University here in Philadelphia is a center of very major developments in this area for the Internet of Clothes. One project is a collaboration between Professor Geneviève Dion, who is a technology fashion expert, and electrical engineering professor, Kapil Dandekar, who are developing various sensors that would be built into fabrics.
How about that?
And one of theirs is right now in clinical trials at Drexel University's med school. It's a baby shirt, and it's for newborn babies that might be at risk. And this shirt is entirely flexible and soft, and yet it has sensors built in, so it can monitor the breathing of the infant, and if anything goes wrong, it will allow a signal to be sent wirelessly to a sensor in the room.
Incredible.
So are these sensors like little metal tags that we would see, like the security thing on the clothing? So I've walked out of Macy's, I go through the door, the alarm goes off, or is it actually the fabric itself?
It's both. And as a matter of fact, the technology that a lot of them use is exactly that same RFID tag technology. Some of them are actually built into the fibers themselves, and others are a little bit separate from the fibers, and they use the fibers in some instances as the antenna to broadcast the signal. A lot of interesting alternatives are being developed. And one of the things that I enjoy doing as a patent attorney is helping the inventors to get patent protection for those inventions that they're making.
Sounds
those
like
new
my
technologies.
cleaning directions on my tags on my clothing is going to get a little longer.
Yeah.
That's a good point. So is this clothing going to be such that that it's just you have to use it once, or can you clean it?
Well, those are some of the issues that are currently being worked on by the various developers. And as a matter of fact, I participated in an expo in New Orleans this last fall for an organization that's a trade association of developers of advanced textiles called the IFAI. And while at the IFAI conference, I was interviewed by an entrepreneur named Ben Cooper, who interviewed me for a podcast and is now setting up a social media platform for entrepreneurs developing new products in exactly this area. And his platform is called I.O. Clothes instead of I.O. Things.
Interesting.
And so the Internet of Clothes that Ben is operating is ioclothes.com, and I invite anyone who wants to sign on for free and get a username and password. They can join and then participate in conversations that would then be posted and have threads of communications. Ben has invited me to be a sort of a concierge to help moderate the discussion on legal and regulatory aspects of the Internet of Clothes.
Neat. Fantastic.
As a banker, of course, it's everything to me is IOU.
Right, yeah. That's right. Yeah.
But Jerry, certainly our viewers are very concerned about all this cybersecurity type of stuff. What should they keep in mind, ways to improve their own cybersecurity?
Well, as I mentioned, patch your software, and when you get an email,
Patch your software.
you're going to get messages from Microsoft that the Microsoft Windows operating system is ready for an update.
Okay.
Make sure you've got that set up so that takes place.
How do I know it's legitimate?
That's one of the problems, that you need to rely on your
Complicated.
vendor
Yeah.
to have a secure system to legitimately download those patches. And we keep our fingers crossed that our application program vendors know what they're doing and are
Right.
able to keep the bad guys out. Most of the time that happens, but there always is some kind of a vulnerability in the systems. You had mentioned having an Olympic medalist as a scholarship candidate. Just a few days ago at the Olympics in South Korea, some bad guys chose to hack into the major operating systems that were operated by the folks who were running the Olympics. It prevented some of the tickets to get into the viewing seats from being printed out, and a number of other communication channels were shut down. It was sort of a slap on the wrist against the folks who are operating the Olympics. Perhaps one can surmise who might have the expertise in hacking and also a grudge against the operators of the Olympics to guess who or what group might be behind that. But there are a lot of folks and governments that have the kind of expertise that find the chinks in the armor that can potentially get into a variety of computer operating systems.
Jerry, does your website, or what would you recommend to our viewers to find out more what they can do and how to stay on top of this type of stuff? What kind of resources should they be looking at?
Well, certainly, as I mentioned, at Elman.com, I have information posted, and you can also sign up if you want to get our ongoing newsletters from our law firm. And we're interested in the areas of intellectual property to help businesses protect their new developments.
That's terrific.
And the area of cybersecurity.
We're running out of time, unfortunately.
Sure.
But I appreciate that. Those resources for our viewers is really critical. Thank you very much. It's a
Thank you.
fascinating subject. It's always evolving.
Thank you.
And our next guest on the show will be Daniel Carberry, CEO of Ammerling Pharmaceuticals. So in the meantime, please remember that on this show, your money matters.